We're on.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Planning and Zoning meeting for tonight, May the 6th, 2021. Our first order of business will be our public hearings and our public comment.
We're going to review the policy.
We're going to review the policy. Do you want me to do that, or Mr. Burks, would you like to do that?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Burks.
All right, the public hearing policy. The city staff will present request inclusions of the necessary items into the record. Applicants and representatives will be given 10 minutes to present projects and information. Public will be given 5 minutes to provide comments. When the buzzer goes off, 30 additional seconds given to conclude remarks. After the public has spoke, applicants will be given 5 minutes to address any issues concerned brought forth during the public comments. This dialogue is with the board, not the public. Speakers shall not directly question applicants. All comments are to be directed to the board, mayor, or attorney. On zoning matters that do not require a public hearing, the same protocol will be followed during the public comment section of each zoning item. At no time are speakers allowed to yield their time to another speaker to allow more than 5 minutes. During the agenda items, discussion and comments from board only will occur, no public input.
Thank you, Mr. Burks. This has seemed to work the last couple of months on Zoom, so we expect it to work just as well tonight as well. So appreciate your cooperation in advance. First order of business will be our public hearings, and the first one will be resolution number 332, adopting an amendment to the comprehensive plan for the city of Warrenton. Mr. Burks, we'll turn the floor over to you, sir.
As a preliminary matter for this public hearing, I will ask that the publication notice published in the Warren County Record be made part of the record by reference. The city comprehensive plan and city ordinances be made part of the record by reference, and the planning and zoning officer report be made part of the reference, or the record by reference. This is a South Morgan Street comprehensive plan addendum. The city of Warrenton, a comprehensive plan. Chapter 8 includes transportation framework for the policies and recommendations of the future development of the city envisioned in the land use element of the plan. This section includes majority road improvements recommendation across the city. However, more micro level policies are needed to clearly implement the goals of the plan and to migrate the long-term impact of development. This has been brought to the forefront discussion with the proposed development of Park Hills, which proposed to change in zoning and a preliminary plat for the development of a single-family development of 35.34 acres on the west side of South Morgan Street, across from Brinkley Woods and Spectre Lake. It's a recommendation of the city in this memorandum should be considered for adoption as a supplement to the comprehensive plan as a mechanism to provide a micro-analysis of the citywide plan and to pertain to a specific area. The development proposed within this area should be evaluated to ensure that adequate public facilities are extended to the adjacent parcels to provide a logical progression of development patterns across the city and that are compatible with the comprehensive plan and mitigate the burden on existing taxpayers. Finally, the city should consider formalizing strategy to fund an anticipated off-site improvement in the future. There will be a resolution later on for consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Burks. Since there is no applicant or representative for that, we'll move on to the public. If there's any comments from the public on this resolution in favor or against. Hearing none, we'll move on to our next public hearing, which will be the Farmers Mutual Insurance Site Plan -146. Mr. Burks.
As a preliminary matter for this public hearing, I will ask the publication notice published in Warren County Record be made part of the record by reference. The city's comprehensive plan and city ordinances be made part of the record by reference. The planning and zoning officer report be made part of the record by reference. Okay, I'm presenting to you tonight, it's the Farmer Mutual Insurance Building, SP 146. It's 1 acre on the east side of Highway 47 across from Bruni Parkway. Martin Myers, on behalf of Farmer Mutual Insurance of Warrenton County has submitted an application for site plan approval for the 1.0 acres area of land on the east side of Highway 47 across from Bruni Parkway. This site plan shows construction office building and associated improvements on the site. The subject site is Zone C2, General Commercial District, and is surrounded by properties of the same classification. Staff analysis, the relationship proposed to use function sites and building within the tract to each other, the provision and distribution of adequate parking and facilities, the provision of proper means and access for the to and from public roadways, the provision of the site amenities include off-street parking, landscaping, and lighting. Other factors relevant to the public health, safety, and convenience and general welfare of the residents of the City of Warrenton. The staff is not aware of any additional factors. The staff recommendation, the staff has reviewed the proposed site plan and recommends approval of this request.
Thank you, Mr. Burks. If the applicant or representative is here, they have time to speak at this time. Come to the podium, state your name, sir. Appreciate your being here.
Good evening. My name is Martin Meyer. I'm an architect with PSBA and I'm representing Farmers Mutual Insurance of Warren County. Our building for that site is about 4,568 square feet. It's on an acre site, as Tim mentioned. We've had a few issues that we've responded to since your original report, and we're proud that we kind of got information to you in a timely manner, and it seemed to be thorough. And if there are any questions about this development, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Appreciate it. We'll bring them back up in a little while when we come to the regular meeting.
Thank you.
Anybody in the public would like to speak in favor or against this at this time? Hearing none, we'll close the Farmers Mutual site plan and open up the Binnington Place Apartments Conditional Use Permit -75.
As a preliminary matter for this public hearing, I will ask that publication notice published in Warren County Record be made part of the record by reference. The city comprehensive plan and city ordinances be made part of the record by reference, and the planning and zoning officer report be made part of the record by reference. This is the Binnington Place Apartments Conditional Use Permit number 75. It's a 0.71 acre on the west side of Arlington Way. Lewis and Beatty, on behalf of Pollard Properties, has submitted an application for conditional use permit approval for 0.71 acres of land at the intersection of Arlington Way and Armory Road. This conditional use permit is requested to allow multifamily dwelling units on the site with a site plan depicting 2 buildings served by a shared parking lot. And there is a site plan to go along with that. Okay. Staff has recommended that staff has reviewed and proposed conditional use permit and recommends approval of this request with the following conditions. A lighting plan comply with the Warrenton City Code shall be provided to the city prior to the issuance of building permit. Detail of the trash enclosure verifying compliance with the Warrenton City Code shall be provided to the city prior to issuance of the building permit. Final stormwater management plan shall be submitted in accordance with section 430.11 prior to approval of building permit and prior to commencement of any grading on the site. Erosion control measures shall be installed to ensure settlement doesn't leave the site. That's all I have, sir.
Somebody speak on behalf of this? From Lewis and Beatty, thank you. Step to the podium, state your name, sir. Appreciate you being here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Colin Bruckeroff with Lewis and Beatty, representing Adam Pollard with Pollard Properties. Here to talk about the conditional use plan. Basically, it's another multifamily multifamily development Everything around is either hotel or multifamily, so it fits in with the use. Meet the parking requirements established by the city code. Landscaping, we got the lighting plan into Tim. Got our access, everything there. We'll follow up later on in the construction plan submittal with the dumpster enclosure detail. And since the site was previously developed, we don't plan on any stormwater detention requirements because our calculations show that we're decreasing the amount of impervious area. So I can answer questions later on.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone from the public to speak on behalf or against this proposal tonight? Hearing none, we'll close the Binnington Place conditional use permit and open up the Binnington Place Apartments Site Plan -147. Mr. Burks?
As a preliminary matter for this public hearing, I will ask that the publication notice published in the Warrenton County Record be made part of the record by reference, the city comprehensive plan and the city ordinances be made part of the record by reference, and the planning and zoning officer's report be made part of the record by reference. This is the Binnington Place Apartment Site Plan 147. It's the same information as with the conditional use permit. And the staff's recommendation, staff has reviewed the proposed site plan and recommends approval of the request with the following conditions, and has the same conditions as the conditional use permit.
Thank you, Mr. Burks. You guys want to comment on this part too? Same? Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak on behalf or against this proposal tonight? Hearing none, we'll close our public hearing for that and open up our Park Hills Zone Change -67. Mr. Burks?
As a preliminary matter for this public hearing, I will ask that the publication notice published in Warren County Record be made part of the record by reference, the city comprehensive plan, the city ordinances be made part of the record by reference, the planning and zoning officer report be made part of the record by reference. This is Park Hills rezone 67. It's 35.34 acres on the west side of South Morgan, approximately 1,575 feet south of West Walton Street. Corey Eckenfeld, on behalf of Ben Beckemeyer Construction, LLC, has submitted an application for a change in zoning for the 35.34 acre site on the west side of South Morgan Street, approximately 1,575 feet south of West Walton Street. The request is to rezone the area from agricultural district to R3 high density residential district. The staff analysis and rezoning request. The subject site is identified in a comprehensive plan for a future single-family development, and reviewing the characteristics of the subject tract. The presence of Big Creek running north and south through the site defines the subject site. Below is an image of it shows the FEMA flood hazard information site, and there should have been a larger sheet with that printed out for your review. Staff has reviewed the request to rezone the subject site from Agricultural Reserve District to R3 High Density Residential District. All items and notices as required by the state and local law have been provided and completed. The proposal is consistent with the future land use map, and the staff is supportive of the change in zoning from Agricultural Reserve to R3 High Density Residential District.
Works. Anybody from the applicant here to speak? Thank you. State your name.
I'm Christina Lubert with Lubert Engineering, and also working with Patchett Surveying on this project. Probably more so to say about things when we get to the preliminary plat, but for the zoning, I think the staff report covered most of it. The fact that it's consistent with what's kind of out there, both right in front of the site, there's already some, similar homes, and then to the south, there's already some similar homes. So I think we're very consistent with the area. So any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Anyone from the public to speak on behalf or against this proposal tonight? chance to speak? Hearing none, we'll close our public hearing on the Park Hills Zone Change 67. And our last two public hearing comments have been removed. So we'll close our public hearings for tonight and open up our regular planning and zoning meeting. And our first order of business will be our minutes from the April 1st, 2021 P&Z meeting, which was our last Zoom meeting. I know Mr. Deach is very excited to be here in person. You look better in person. Recommend a motion.
Moves to take the minutes as read.
Yeah.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cooper, second by Mr. Holt to approve the minutes as submitted. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote.
Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Deach?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman absent. Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Abstain, I was absent.
Mr. Priest is absent, and we have 2 vacancies.
All right, this motion passes 5-0 with 1 abstention, 2 absence, 2 vacancies. Number 2, change the meeting time to 6 p.m. Did you have something to do with that?
Sometimes these meetings they run a little long, gets into my bedtime.
So, is this up for discussion tonight? Is that what we're trying to do?
Yes.
Pros and cons?
Yes, it's up for discussion with you guys to see with everything coming down the lines, and it seems like P&Z is going to start possibly getting longer meetings. We thought we would bring it to you guys to see if you wanted to start earlier. Completely up to you
Let's get
guys.
some dinner out of this. That's dinner hour.
Yes, it is.
I like the 7 o'clock myself, but that's just me.
I guess my only question is, for people trying to get to the meeting, they're coming home from work, if we meet at 6, how inconvenient is that going to be for city residents who would like to attend the meeting?
I don't mind 7 o'clock. I mean, it's one of those things where, well, I don't mind any time. Every day's Saturday.
Every day Saturday.
That's right. And I kind
7 o'clock.
of, well, 7 o'clock just means that out of respect to those that do work, I mean, tonight, we got Mr. Cullum, those guys, and sometimes tough to get here right at 7 anyway, that late, and so,
Yeah, I mean, I'm a remote employee right now, and I'm going to start commuting here soon. My commute's about a half hour, so 7 o'clock is
better.
good for me, yeah.
And I don't mind staying later, so I know it's inconvenience to the city staff sometimes too, because you guys are here all day and then have to stay later, so
Yeah.
I understand that and respect that, but I think we should stay at 7 at this time, and then we'll readdress it if it becomes an issue that we're going until midnight.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So, all right. Any other questions or comments about that?
No.
That was just discussion, correct? We didn't need to do anything? Let's move on to our public comments for tonight. Our first public comment will be the Morgan Street Boundary Line Adjustment Subdivision -88.
Morgan Street boundary line adjustment. This is 16,800 square feet on the east side of Morgan Street, south of West Walton at 208-210 Morgan Street. Lewis and Beatty, on behalf of Warrenton 1 LLC, has submitted an application for boundary line adjustment plat for a 16,800 square foot area of land on the east side of Morgan Street, south of West Walton Street. This area is zoned residential under the provision of the R3 high-density residential district requirements. Any future developments of the area and the subject reviewed to ensure compliance of all provisions of the R3 district and the city code requirements. The plan is to modify 2 existing lots by creating 2 8,400 square foot lots, each having 1 duplex structure located on it. No modifications to utilities are proposed in conjunction with the change of the lot configuration. Staff has reviewed the proposed boundary line adjustment plat and found that the proposal is consistent with Chapter 410 subdivision regulations of the Warrenton Municipal Code. Staff recommends approval of the plat as submitted. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Burks. Mr. Corman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, Bart Corman, Lewis and Beatty Surveyors and Engineers. Adam Pollard with Warrenton 1 LLC is here as well to answer any questions that we have on this. This is on Morgan Street. There's 2 duplexes there already. It's just we're basically dividing it so that each of them have a sellable lot where it's at. There was 2 parcels there and an old alley that's been abandoned, but this cleans it up and creates each structure on its own lot.
Thank you.
That's all I got,
right, thank
because
you.
I got to roll out of here at 7:45, so Colin will have to take all the hard questions
All
later.
right.
So.
Good. All right. Thank you, sir. Anyone from the community would like to speak on behalf or against this at this time? Hearing none, we'll move on to the Granada Boundary Line Adjustment Subdivision -90.
Granada boundary line adjustment. This is going to be 20,193 square feet on Granada Drive, south of South Market Street, 309, 311, 313, and 315 Granada Drive. Listen Beatty, on behalf of Warrenton 1 LLC, has submitted an application for a boundary line adjustment plat for the 20,193 square foot area of land on Granada Drive, south of South Market Street. The plan was to modify 2 existing lots by creating 2 lots that exceeded the minimum requirements for lot design standards in the R3 district. No modifications to utilities service is proposed as part of the change of the lot configuration. Staff has reviewed the proposed boundary line adjustment and found that the proposal is consistent with Chapter 410 subdivision regulation of Warrenton Municipal Code. Staff recommends approval of the plat as submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Burks. Mr. Corman?
Same thing. This is over Granada, which is not too far away from here as well. The duplexes were built on lot lines and things like that. So it was Lot S, Lot T, and Lot U. There's parts of 3 tracks here. We're making it into 2 tracks to basically put the duplexes, 1 on each tract. And the duplexes are there. Can't really move them. So we're putting a line between them and going from there.
Thank you very much. Anybody from the community like to speak on behalf or against this? Hearing none, we'll close that public hearing or public comment and open up Troy Road duplexes preliminary final plat subdivision 89.
This is Troy Road duplexes, 18,332 square feet on the east side of Troy Road, north of Ashland Street, 408 Troy Road. Listen Beatty, on behalf of Warrenton 1 LLC, has submitted an application for preliminary and a final plat for the 18,332 square foot area of land on the east side of Troy Road, north of Ashland. The preliminary plat and final plat depicts splitting an existing lot with 2 duplexes structures into 2 lots, each having 1 duplex building located on the site. Proposed Lot 1 will have frontage on Troy Road. Proposed Lot 2 will have access off the alley, which is how the building is currently accessed. Okay. The existing structures on the lot are already served with utility service, and no changes are proposed with the creation of the new lot structure. As no improvements is necessary to support the reconfiguration of the lots, improvement construction plans are not necessary. Additionally, no public improvements are required. A bond guaranteeing completion is not necessary. The permits and planning and zoning commission to expedite the subdivision review by combining the preliminary plat and the final plat submittal requirements upon request of the subdivider. As such, the preliminary plat and the record plat have been submitted for review and approval. The staff has reviewed the proposed preliminary and final plat and found the proposal is consistent with Chapter 410, the subdivision regulation of the Warrenton Municipal Code. Staff recommends approval of the plat submitted.
Thank you, Mr. Burks. Norman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this one's a little different. Same concept, except there was no second parcel, so we couldn't go through the boundary adjustment process, so we actually have to go through a subdivision process. So it's the same process paperwork-wise as 50 or 100 lots, but in this case, it's 2 existing developed lots. A duplex on each of them. One's access is Troy Road, one is access is the alley. This is over just north of the senior center, kind of behind Jim Ledbetter's State Farm Insurance. So kind of put you in place there. They've been there a long time. We're creating the easements on the perimeter and stuff like that, just like a normal subdivision requirement. The one thing that is required in a subdivision is the sidewalks. Okay, since these are already developed, there's some steep banks on some of that. There's no sidewalks in the alley as well, so we're going to ask the Board of Aldermen for us to contribute to the sidewalk fund for that amount there. That is up to the Board of Aldermen's purview. Hopefully, you guys can recommend that be done, but that it's truly their authority that we have to ask for that, and so that's on the preliminary plat asking that. But we're not planning on changing anything or constructing anything since the buildings are already there. And I'll take any questions anybody has on this because it's a little different than the boundary adjustments. So.
Do anything, it's, okay, we're gonna be using the alley for the, they gotta make any kind of improvements to that?
It's an existing alley that they've been using for years.
They're not gonna blacktop it, they're not gonna do anything, just gonna leave it. It was pretty rough last time I was down it.
Well, you know what? I haven't been down it, so I don't know, but I would imagine it probably is.
Got the grass over there, so I kind of know the property.
Yeah. So we're not proposing any because there are already existing roads and alleys that are being used. If we were, building and going to add more traffic to it, then it would probably be a different story. But yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Corman. Anyone? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask, on that one, my recollection is that at least the westernmost duplex, that's served off of Troy Road. There's a driveway that comes up. It actually connects all the way up to the duplex on the east end, and I don't know if the occupants on the east end use that driveway or if they use the alley primarily to access. But I guess my question is, that driveway does run the entire property line. Is there any kind of a agreement, anything in writing about the use of that, and specifically the way the lot lines fall that I can see? I think that driveway actually doesn't sit on the lots in question. I think the driveway actually sits on the lot to the north.
I believe you are correct because we did not show it on our survey because it is actually off the property.
That is correct.
And
Jim Ledbetter owns the lot with the gravel road that runs from Troy Road to Troy Avenue. We have a gentleman's agreement, but nothing in writing.
Yeah. So,
And my only concern with it is it's not so much that the lot line adjustment creates an immediate issue. I don't think it does. But in the long run, whoever lives there needs access to get to the property. And so if there's not some written formal long-term agreement for the use of those driveways, at some point or another, there's going to have to be a driveway put in on the premises. And I'd just kind of like to anticipate how we're going to address that if it comes up.
right. Like I say, they're going to use the alley as their legal access. So if that driveway that is in question that's off the property would get a gate across it, they would be coming up to the alley like they probably do sometimes anyway.
So basically at that point, then our current owner, or whoever the owner at the point in time is, would have to make arrangements to put a new driveway in, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, there is a driveway there, but yeah, it's not as much as probably for all the cars that would be in those 2 residents. But yeah.
It may never be an issue, but if that property to the north ever becomes a developed property, I'm going to assume that the owner might want to make use of what's currently being used by the residents in the duplexes.
Right.
We've started talks of getting...
You have to step up, sir. State your name for the record.
Adam Pollard with Pollard Properties. We've started the discussions with Jim Ledbetter to put an easement in place for it would be the east side of the west duplex. That's the only one that does not have direct access from the alleyway or from Troy Road. So we're in the talks of putting that easement in place just to access that one single driveway.
Okay.
Thank you.
As long as someone's at least aware that it might come up as
No,
an
we are
issue at
aware.
some point.
Fully aware.
Okay, all right.
Had discussions.
And that was kind of out of the ordinary. I allowed him to go ahead and speak to you because you're getting ready to leave at 7:45, so that was out of respect to you.
And I appreciate that.
Anyone else from the community that would like to speak on or against that? Troy Road. Hearing none, we'll open up our last public comment, and that's Park Hills subdivision preliminary plat phase 1 subdivision -87.
Park Hill subdivision is 35.24 acres on the west side of South Morgan Street across from Brinkley Woods and Spectre Lake. Corey Eckerfeld, I've been Beckmeyer Construction.
Has submitted a application for a preliminary plat for the 35.34 acre tract land located to the west side of South Morgan across from Brinkley Park, or Brinkley Woods and Spectre Lake. The request is to establish a 97 single-family resident lot with associated infrastructure to support the development. Project phasing. The submitted plans indicated the project will be developed in phases, with the phase 1 generally being on the east side of Big Creek. Area proposed to be included this phase are shown in red in the image below. I don't know if you should have a copy that shows the east side of, in red. That will be the first phase. Okay. This area is generally able to be served with proposed access onto South Morgan. It should be noted that Lot 21 is to be sold as an adjacent property owner. While the plan notes that this intention, adequate plans must still exist that permit serving this lot with access and other related infrastructure in event that the parcel is not brought and consolidated with the adjacent property owner. Easement for this access and utility located are provided on the preliminary plat. The staff would note the following features of the proposed preliminary plat. Sidewalks are included on one side of proposed streets and are located within the proposed right-of-way. The plan includes area installation of mailboxes, section 410-145. The facilities are located outside the right-of-way and easements on common ground. The final approval of the design and facilities will be required prior to final plat approval. Okay. The staff has reviewed and proposed preliminary plat and found that the proposal is consistent with Chapter 410, the subdivision regulation of Warrenton Municipal Code. Further, the proposed design of the residential subdivision features the goal of the comprehensive plan. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat with the following conditions. Development of phase 2 or later phases is not permitted until access to the western portion of the subject site is provided to the south or to the west. Guarantees and formula acceptable to the city. Provide a floodplain development permit for all work within the regulatory floodplain. Provide a parking lane striping plan to the Public Works as required by the City of Warrenton Ordinance 2550. Construction traffic shall utilize South Morgan for phase 1 of the development, and Coleman shall only be utilized for construction access for phase 2 or later phases of the development. Coleman will not be used once construction is completed. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Anyone? Go ahead, thank you.
Christina Lubert with Lubert Engineering again, and we've spent quite a bit of time working with the city and coming up with a few concessions to make this project work. I've also been in talks with the property owner to the south who is interested in the next 12 to 18 months of probably bringing his own development proposal forward to make the connection to the south, which would open up the west side of the project for development and be a very consistent development with what we're doing, really wants to coordinate that road construction together so that, it's the most cost-effective for everybody, which I know is one of our biggest concerns. I have extensive experience in floodplain management, and we will definitely file all the appropriate paperwork with our construction documents. Given this is a preliminary plat, it's really, we've gone, I think, above and beyond showing a lot of detail, trying to give a good, solid understanding of what this project will look like when it's done, but we have not started the full-on design construction documents yet because we've been waiting for this to get approved so that we could move forward. I think there was a couple other little comments, and most of them, the striping plan, again, that would show up on the details that we provide with our construction documents. A couple other things really were the same in that. And then, coming up with a construction traffic plan, making sure that we're not disrupting people more than necessary with construction traffic, and negotiating some of those access points, I think we'll work with as we move forward. Ben Beckmeyer is here to speak to if you guys have any additional questions, or if you have any questions for me on the more technical side of things.
Thank you very much. Any community members would like to speak now? Thank you, sir. State your name for the record, please.
I'm Dan Buzicruz,
Thank you, Mr.
321
Buzicruz.
South Morgan. I appreciate the job you folks do. I've been in your shoes before when it comes to budget and infrastructure and population control. It gets quite interesting. I only have a point question. The sewer size. Will the new development be connected to the new sewer that is being implemented now out by Rural King, and will it be coming this way? Do we know that question?
We actually have something in the budget, and I don't know the exact layout of it, so I can find out that information for you for sure.
That'd be great.
But I do know that there is a project that is coming through there. There's a piece that's coming through there, because I think somebody mentioned at one of the meetings about the manholes coming off. I think
Right,
that
that
might have been you.
was- yeah, that was Tim.
And that is, when I went back and talked to our Public Works Director, there is something in the works
Okay.
for that.
That's the question I have, because in April, and I appreciate everything the city does, and I always enjoy seeing Public Works come down my driveway, because I know we're going to, whatever is happening is being taken care of. It's just odd that, during a 1-inch rain, we'll have sewage coming out of manholes about 2.5 to 3 foot above the manhole itself, coming out of manholes. We've got some interesting pictures. And that's occurred about every time there's an inch to inch and a half rain. For some reason, those manholes fill up, whether it's clogging up or whether I know there was difficulty at Holland where it was making an S around the building. That's my major concern. As we put more houses on, we certainly want that to occur. We support having good neighbors and seeing Morgan Street build up. It's just that the infrastructure, we just like, as a landowner, to make sure that, and again, we appreciate Public Works, and I appreciate them utilizing my driveway when they come down all this time, but if it's in the budget, how many houses can be added, I wonder, to the plat until the new line is budgeted or is actually going, through, and because that line will go a few hundred feet across the back of my property to be, able to connect everybody. So my question has always been, we certainly don't want sewage to come out. And the unique thing about where the sewage manholes are now is that on Ben's side and my side, they're about 2 foot from a water drainage ditch that comes off of South Street, comes across the back of the park where the swimming pool was, goes underneath the road, goes by Rick Davis's house, then passes down across Ben's and my area too, my lot. The issue is that when that sewage comes up, those manholes are 2 foot from about probably 20 foot before it goes into Big Creek. So the sewage thing, is probably a concern. as you know, as you folks make decisions as to, how many and what can we do, to address that sewer question. So mine is, again, just a point of question, is to make sure that the capacity of the sewer line that's there now, it seems to be pretty taxed. And, how soon will that be laid and developed so everything can, flow as it should? So that's my only question.
Thank you, Mr. Boozy-Cruz.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Can I ask one question? Can you clarify on when you do have the issue with the manhole covers being overwhelmed and you refer to sewage, do you know, are you able to tell if it's strictly stormwater runoff or are we talking sanitary sewer type?
It's sanitary sewer type because it's sampled on Mr. Cabros's property, and I know that lime is used, when the city comes out, that's usually a cleanup factor. We used to use it, when we were doing things like this too, to be able to, try to adjust the soil for it not to super permeate. So it's not clear water when it comes out. That's
what I was getting at,
saying.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you, appreciate it.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for coming.
Name's Brad Boozy-Cruz,
Thank you,
live at
Mr.
319 South Morgan. Got a question now that we see the new map. This is different from the last one we were at. So now we're going to be bringing people from the south and from the west down, and then we're closing Coleman Road off. Is that correct, the way I understood? Coleman Road will not be used?
Yes, it will not be used.
It will not be used, so everything is coming on South Morgan Street, except for, from the way it sounds. So we got 95 homes coming down a small street on a dead-end street.
The first phase is only going to be 20 homes on the east side of it.
I'm looking ahead to number 2. All these homes are going to be coming down my way. So, I mean, when you all look at this, phase 1 is fine, no problem. We start adding phase 2, we open the one to the south up through Mr. Wolf's road, ground, onto the next, over on Wolf Road. Well, I think I would rather come through town rather than Highway U, the corner there where they got to come out on and all the way around. So that means all those people from out there possibly could be coming through this subdivision down. I mean, is that a fair statement? I mean, if you all have looked at the plans and you can see there's only one way out right now. And if the one to the west there doesn't develop his, that means all 95 of those homes are coming out through me. Before they were going to be going out Coleman Road and then Morgan Street. Well, and then this resolution, I take it this is something new, and I wish they would have put something out because this was nothing on the planning, on the thing. All it's on here is a resolution, doesn't say what it is. You all talked about it was going to be for roads. I take it they're doing roads, sewer, land. They're going to widen the road. Is that what we're looking at doing?
The resolution is to adopt that south part, the south road that's going to go through Mr. Wolf's property.
Oh, so that's just for
That's
Mr.
just-
Wolf. We're not doing
that's
anything
just-
with South Morgan Street.
That's just the transportation for the south side that we're adding to the comprehensive plan. That's all. In addition to the Highway U, where it's going out onto Highway U is, we checked with the police chief, and it's safer for them to go out to Highway U there than it was for them to go out onto Coleman Road. So that's
But
why
they're
that
saying
has
they're
also
not going to
changed.
use Highway U, Coleman Road. Oh, you're talking about
It was
out
safer
Highway
to
U's
go out
going all
Wolf
the way out.
Road. Right, to go out Wolf
Okay.
Road rather than down at Coleman Road, because there's a corner there.
All right, so we could have possibly 2 exits, maybe. One out on Highway U, or one in
If I recollect,
Wolf Road runs out to Highway U.
U, right on that sharp corner.
No. If I recollect correctly, though, the comprehensive plan many years ago was always in the plan to run Warrior Avenue out to Highway U eventually somewhere down the road anyway, if I'm recollecting correctly.
I do think that's right. I think as more properties develop, it makes that a more difficult thing to achieve because it requires newly developed property then to be effectively have to be considered for condemnation and eminent domain in order to make that connection. And I can remember going all the way back to, I think, the 2000 comprehensive plan, which was originally put together shortly before I came on this commission. I think, Mr. Burton, you may have been on about the time that one was put together, and I know it was a very open, free-flowing concept to eventually make a connection. Warrior Avenue didn't even exist then, but to make a connection from South 47 through to Highway U. And I think our community eventually benefits from something of that nature happening. The problem is, as we continue to develop, someone's property has to be effectively taken to do that. So I think the bar continues to get raised every year that goes, that more development occurs, and so I think that original path that was imagined is probably a little more obstructed now. But you're right. That's been on the drawing board and in the conversation for 20 years.
I apologize, Mr. Vizicos, I took a couple of your minutes. Go ahead and finish up your comments.
No, that's all I have. I'm just looking at, because before we were talking about, one way out was not a best way for 100 cars to come down with the park being there.
Right.
And there's just going to be a lot of traffic unless the city's going to, put a new road in and stuff, then if we get it up to, specs, it is one of the smallest roads in the city, so. And now we're going to have all the concrete trucks and everything, the only access is going to be South Morgan Street.
Appreciate your time.
So,
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Good evening, sir. State your name for the record, please.
My name's Rick Davis.
Hi, Mr. Davis. Thank you.
323 South Morgan.
Thank you.
Right next to Brad and Dan. But my concern is the erosion under the new construction deal that's coming off of that hill there. And if it gets down into that creek, it's going to flood, back up, and it's really going to do some damage to their property and mine. So my concern is there going to be steps that are looked after to kind of solve this problem? I'm not against homes being built or anything, but as they go along, the cleanup process has to be done too. So,
we'll address that in the open meeting then.
Mainly the flood problem.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Anyone else? Thank you, gentlemen, for your comments. At this time, we'll close our public comments and open up resolution number 332, adopting an amendment to the comprehensive plan for the city of Warrenton. It is our time, commission, now to talk. So ask questions. Anybody out there that you need a question to answer, they can answer it for you. Or we can discuss it amongst yourself. Then we'll entertain motions and move on.
So I don't know who the best person to answer the question is, and maybe it's Brandy, maybe it's Mr. Burks. The way that this proposed link is being shown, this wouldn't really in and of itself be the final connecting between 47 and Highway U. This is just a kind of connector for the property we're talking about tonight, giving points of access in from two places instead of one. Am I?
You're correct.
Reading that right? Okay. The thing that I see with this, I think if we're talking about a development with potentially this number of homes, it's really, really critical that we've got more than one way in and out. That's my personal opinion for the safety of the people that would live there. It's very important to have
ways in and out for a variety of reasons. I remember when Warrior Avenue went in, when the high school was built and the school was built up. At that time, I was living off of Lakeview on the east side of 47. And what happened was all of the traffic in and out of the high school, in order to bypass Warrior and to effectively get off of 47, which tended to back up a great deal morning and afternoon when school let out, lots and lots of that traffic decided a great shortcut was to go down Lakeview and then through the subdivision onto the east and then down onto Pinckney and up and around into the other end of the high school. So as I look at what's on paper here, and I'm not criticizing what's on paper, I see it as becoming a bypass for traffic that comes into town on Highway U to avoid having to go all the way to Main Street, and instead becomes a bypass through Wolf Road and eventually through the subdivision we're talking about tonight, and then up Morgan Street. And I have a concern about that because I think it changes the neighborhood in a way that isn't intended, and I think it changes the neighborhood in a way that the residents of the new subdivision we're talking about and the residents that are already there are harmed by. And that's my concern. Unfortunately, it's always bad when you can find a problem but don't have a solution, but that's what I see.
I would agree with you, Mr. Costello. Also, the concern is for people who use the park. Some of those people are on foot when they go to the park. So if you increase the traffic, what kind of danger does it put those people in? So I share your concern.
I'm not overly fond of this high density in that particular area. It seems like it needs to be a lower density housing. Because if you look at the neighborhood there, I was looking at it today, and it's just, it just seems like when you put that kind of housing in there, you're just overwhelming the area, and you're taking out the nicer aspects of it. So.
Can you remind us one more time what the deal with Coleman Road is on this?
So Coleman Road it's part industrial.
Right.
When you're heading east on U, kind of dog legs, the issue is with the visibility of the traffic coming. When you're trying to make a left off of U on the Coleman Road, you have limited visibility there.
Right. I'm talking about for like construction purposes. Are they going to use that for construction purposes?
Yes, just for the second phase. So before they can start
I think that was one of the concerns that Mr. Boozy Cruz had.
Right, before they can start the second phase, that other option to the south has to be, or another second access has to be in place.
And that's where this resolution comes in.
Yes.
So this first resolution is to give them a second access for the first phase.
They only need one access for the first phase. There's only going to be 20 homes on the east side of the creek for phase one.
Right, my understanding is what we're discussing is a change to the comprehensive plan to make a permanent, basically a permanent change to the comprehensive plan endorsing this route
To the south.
from Highway U Wolf Road through to Morgan. Am I
Out of the
understanding that
subdivision
correctly?
down south to Wolf Road out to Highway U.
Right.
Yes.
And And that would survive all phases of construction that would exist as part of the change in the comprehensive plan. And, you know, after all the development's complete, it would continue to exist, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
When will that be done? Is that in the next year, or it's a comprehensive part of it?
The resolution,
No, the road, when will it be done?
we don't have a time schedule on that.
And is there discussion to, because I know in the last meeting we discussed this as well, if it comes to South Morgan, is it gonna branch into that one street where that lady had a concern? Well, it's already there. Is that gonna be opened up to go through over to South 47 by?
I don't know if that development was in the process.
I mean, do you think that's in the plans? I mean, to me, it's naturally to be in the plans. That's the way it was designed there. My point there is to alleviate some of that traffic they're concerned about would be if they're going to school or they're going to Casey's, they wouldn't go that way, they'd go that way. So, I mean, that would help alleviate some of the problems that they're speaking about now, is what I'm saying, in the future, if that's a part of the comprehensive plan as well. But that, at this time, that's not part of this comprehensive plan, this is just the Morgan Street.
Correct.
But I'm just brainstorming. Not saying it's happening, just brainstorming. Well, Mr. Holt, you're off quiet down there?
For now.
Okay.
I don't have anything.
You don't have anything on it?
I don't like the only one or two accesses to all of that.
So back to my first question though. So after phase one is built, during phase one, they're only going to be able to use South Morgan to get in there, correct? Am I correct on that?
Yes.
After phase one is built, then they'll be able to use Coleman Road to get in there for phase two?
For construction.
For construction only, right?
Yes.
And then once all that is done, Coleman Road will be then shut down
Yes.
in the hopes of,
Well, before phase two can start, there has to be another access.
right, I wrote that. Phase two or three cannot be built until there's some issues taken care of.
Correct.
Floodplain, street plan, construction traffic, blah, blah, blah. And that's where that second exit comes into play. And is that the one that's gonna go out on Wolf Road?
That's going south to Wolf Road, out
So
to Highway.
that's the answer to your question, I think, is when was that plan coming in? It has to be done before they can start building on phase two and three.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes.
I believe they can start building, they cannot issue any permits. Like you cannot have, they won't be able to occupy any of those homes until that phase, until that south, either the south or the west exits are provided.
Okay. Mr. Costello?
This is one small part of a large consideration because we're talking about a change to comprehensive plan, then later on we're picking up a rezone request, then we're picking up conditional use in a site plan.
Yeah.
With the understanding that there will later on down the road be some additional site plan plat approval. So I want to make sure that all of us recognize that the conversation on the agenda that we're talking about right now is simply about the comprehensive plan, the concept of changing the comprehensive plan to create this, we've got kind of a footprint, we don't have the exact route, but the concept to create what effectively becomes a bypass road that connects Highway U via Wolf Road all the way to South Morgan, and then ultimately up to Main Street or Walton and then on to 47. And so, again, referencing the experience that I recall from when the high school was first built, I think this is a I think it's a creative approach to try to put that second access point in place that I think all of us agree is important for a development of this magnitude. My fear is that it might be creating an unintended consequence and becoming a bypass road that becomes a nuisance for everyone that lives there. And because I've seen it happen in our community elsewhere. And I don't think that's fair to the people that live there now. And I honestly don't think it's fair to the people that would live in the homes that are yet to be built. Mr. Barton, Mr. Deach, I think even Mr. Durbin, you've been here a while. So when we make a motion, it's always made in the affirmative, and I don't want anyone to misunderstand that when I make a motion in the affirmative, it doesn't mean that I think this is a good change to our comprehensive plan. So having said that, I'll make a motion that we approve the amendment to the comprehensive plan.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Costello, second by Mr. Cooper to approve the resolution number 332, adopting an amendment to the comprehensive plan for the city of Warrenton. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote?
Mr. Costello?
No.
Mr. Deach?
No.
Mr. Barton?
No.
Mr. Durbin?
No.
Mr. Cooper?
No.
Mr. Holt?
No.
Motion fails 6-0. And now coming from the Board of Aldermen.
No, it won't.
Oh, it won't?
No.
That just stops here at that time? Sorry about that. Next order of business will be Morgan Street Boundary Line Adjustment Subdivision -88. This is just one of those things that we've been trying to clean up here lately with all the duplexes in town. So I think it's pretty much a routine deal. Any other questions about this? If not, entertain a motion.
Make a motion to accept the Morgan Street boundary line adjustment subdivision 88 PDF.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cooper, second by Mr. Holt to approve the Morgan Street Boundary Line Adjustment Subdivision -88. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote?
Mr. Deach?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Next order of business will be the Granada Boundary Line Adjustment Subdivision -90. Same agenda. Any other questions or comments about this before we get started? Entertain a motion.
A motion to accept the Granada boundary line adjustment subdivision plat 90.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cooper, second by Mr. Holt to approve the Granada Boundary Line Adjustment Subdivision -90. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote?
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Deach?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Next order of business will be the Farmers Mutual Insurance Site Plan -146. Mr. Myers is here if we have any questions for him.
Yeah, question for Mr. Myers.
Come on up, Mr. Myers.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to comment, if you could comment on, I'm looking at the topographic map, and I see a 10-foot difference from over that acre from the east side to the west side. That's enough to maybe to start talking about a little bit of erosion mitigation control, things like that. Is there, for that building to be placed at that location on that lot, has there been measures taken to kind of control some erosion?
Of course, the normal stormwater management plan has been followed and theoretically approved, I believe. Of course, during construction, there will be erosion controls that will be taken care of. Outside of that, the grading plan that we provided will limit the velocity of flow that will cause erosions off of the site and on into the ditch off of the highway.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Myers.
Have you ever witnessed the water there at the highway? Personally? Just asking. I mean, what I'm saying is, because I live right there, and when it rains hard, the water actually comes out of the ditch right there and crosses 47 in a very, very dangerous situation. I don't know whose responsibility this is, but I think what Mr. Holt is talking about, that can only get worse with more concrete there. Not against the proposal anyway by means, because I mean, even when the last time, it's been a few years that somebody had proposed that and we approved it, and then I think the times changed and they decided not to build there. So I'm excited that something's coming in there.
Absolutely.
I think it's a great neighbor for me in my backyard, but I am concerned with, I don't know if MoDOT, I mean, I think I've even called MoDOT about that. It is dangerous there. There's a lot of water comes out of there.
10 feet over an acre is, that's a good slope. So appreciate the comments though. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The water management you're doing is going to be underground? Is that what?
We're storing underground, yes.
Storing underground.
Right.
Trust it's going to be big enough to handle that.
And a lot of study done to prove that it will. So yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's scary. Okay.
Does that eventually run down to Big Creek? It does, doesn't it?
Go through Spectre Lake and straight down.
I start to say, I think, because, I mean, really, everything out of my yard, and I live how far from you guys, it all goes to Big Creek, I know.
Goes down to the Bruni detention pond.
Yep.
And through to Spectre Lake and then through Mr. Goodfellow's Lake, straight down to Big Creek.
Yeah, it's been amazing to learn all this stuff when this has all come up. I just thought Big Creek was down on North 47. Guess what? It's not. It's anybody else have any questions for Mr. Myers about Farmers Mutual Insurance Site Plan -146? Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve Farmers Mutual SP-146.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Holt, second by Mr. Durbin to approve Farmers Mutual Insurance Site Plan -146. Roll call vote.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Deitch?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Next will be the Binnington Place Apartments Conditional Use Permit -75. You're left to talk to us if we have to talk to somebody, so. Sorry. Anybody have any questions about the Binnington Place Apartments? And you said that this is Mr. Pollard's project again? Yes, sir. Thank you for all you're doing there, buddy.
It's really nice, the way all the duplexes and everything is all being cleaned up and becoming an asset as opposed to the slum things we had before.
Slowly.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Any questions on the conditional use permit?
Site plan, right?
No, it's a
Not this
conditional use
conditional use
first.
permit.
It's CUP? Okay.
Let's see. You talked about, and I think you'd mentioned this, Mr. Potter, when you came up, or you talked about this. You guys want to come up? Instead of asking Mr. Burks, we'll just ask you, because I think you had talked about a couple things. You had said something about the lighting plan that was brought up by the city.
Recommended. Yes, it's been submitted. When we made our initial submittal, we didn't have that prepared.
Right,
But
and the trash enclosure, you said you took care of that.
it will be addressed during construction documents for
Okay.
submittal.
Stormwater plan, you said you decided not to do something because can you explain that to us real quickly?
So yes, the stormwater detention, so the site was previously developed as a restaurant and had parking lot
Okay.
and gravel and all that.
Yeah, I remember those days.
So we're taking those areas or that coverage, and with this plan here, our impervious area, which is pavement, will be less than what was there previously. So actually it's it's good for the runoff there.
Right.
So it's not going to negatively impact anything there. So.
And did you comment about the erosion plan, or is that the same difference?
I mean, we'll address erosion control measures during construction documents as well. Silt fence and all that is be provided.
We just want everybody to be happy.
Correct.
That's all I had. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Not really.
Entertain a motion?
Move to accept the Bennington Place Apartment CUP 75.
I'll second it.
With
Yeah,
the conditions, correct?
That's to say, before we get started,
Oh, what's
so the conditions are that they just take care of the things that we were mentioning, which would be the lighting plan that they said they will submit, the trash enclosure, which will submit during construction, the stormwater plan, basically proving that with the documentation that they, right, and then the erosion plan once they do construction. Was there anything else that we needed to put in that conditional use? That's the 4 things that I had down. So do you agree with that, Mr. Cooper?
Yes, I do.
That's fine. So we have a motion by Mr. Cooper, second by Mr. Durbin, to approve the conditional use permit on Bennington Place Apartments -75 with those 4 plans will be implemented as necessary. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote?
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Deitch?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0, 2 absent, 2 vacancies. Next order of business will be Bennington Place Apartments Site Plan -147. Anybody have any questions for the gentleman before we entertain a motion? Is everybody okay with the site plan? Looking forward to seeing something new there. Entertain a motion? Same?
Same conditions on the
Thank you.
site plan.
Conditions. Move to accept the Bennington Place Apartments Site Plan 147 with the same condition as the CUP was.
Thank you.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Cooper, second by Mr. Deitch to approve the Bennington Place Apartment Site Plan -147 with the same 4 conditions that were stated under the conditional use permit, which the gentlemen have agreed to here tonight. So thank you for your help once again, gentlemen, and good luck with your projects. And thanks for what you're doing in the community. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote?
Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Deitch?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Next, we'll have the Troy Road duplexes preliminary final subdivision -89. And this is the one that we were talking about behind Mr. Ledbetter's, is that correct? You want to step forward again? You might, I don't know if you'll be able to answer some of, you probably answer them. Okay. We know how difficult Mr. Corman is to work with, so. He's not here, we could say that. But I think you kind of addressed what Mr. Costello had talked about a while ago. At least you're aware of that condition. You know,
We haven't got that far yet. We've had a gentleman's agreement, but we will proceed with an easement on the, I guess, the west side from Troy Road up to the middle unit. So there's access to that driveway.
We're just always very careful about not leaving open-ended things that might complicate things down the road that people don't see. And if we catch them early, it's easier to deal with them now than it is later. So we just wanted to draw that to your attention. Thank you, Mr. Costello, for doing that. Anybody else have any comments or questions for these gentlemen? Go ahead, Mr. Cooper.
Where do they get their mail?
They have mailboxes on the side of their home,
On the side of their home?
attached to the home
They actually
currently.
do that, okay.
Yeah.
I forgot.
And they have their own numbers.
And their trash pickup,
To the alleyway and to the Troy Road.
both ways?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just
So they get their mail and they get their trash.
to get their mail and their trash. I was just,
What else? Yeah.
I
I'm
mean,
telling you,
that's,
man.
little things, but.
That's right, bud. I agree.
Uh-huh.
You don't miss it until it doesn't get picked up and don't get delivered.
Delivered, yeah.
Oh, man.
I didn't know whether they had to carry it all the way out front or not.
Not that I'm aware of. No.
Okay.
All right, good questions. Anybody else have any questions for these gentlemen about this preliminary final subdivision plat for Troy Road duplexes? Entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion, we accept. I'll make a motion, we accept the Troy Road.
Motion by Mr. Durbin, seconded by
I'll second that.
Mr. Costello to approve those duplexes on Troy Road, preliminary and final subdivision plat -89. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote?
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Deitch?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 with 2 absent, 2 vacancies. Next order of business will be the Park Hills Zone Change Z6, Zone Change -67. And this is the one that changed it from Ag 1 to R3. Has that always been the, I'm just curious, has that always been the plan? Or that has always been the plan?
Mr. Burks, is there a reason that we're changing to R3 instead of R2? I mean, this subdivision plot looks like it's, they're all single-family homes, and it looks like the minimum threshold for square footage per lot is 8,400 square feet on both R2 and R3. I was just kind of curious if you had a comment on why one over the other.
That's what the applicant has applied for. Mr. Beckermeyer's here, maybe he can
Can you guys step forward?
Explain.
And thank you. Did you have a reason why? Because that was my concern too right off the bat is, but we'll give you a chance to speak first before we make any other questions or comments.
So the difference between R2,
Can you speak into the microphone?
so one of the differences between R2 and R3 is just the setback of the home, and it's 5 foot is the difference. Really, if you drove through an R2 and an R3 subdivision, you probably really wouldn't notice. Like I say, it's minimal. The square footage of the lots are the same. Everything else is the same. The requirements are all the same except for that setback. So.
And is that setback? How is that setback affecting you in this project?
It's really not, particularly, and in fact, we actually increased the setback on a few of the cul-de-sac lots to achieve the minimum lot width, because that extra 5 feet made some of those pie shapes. It's kind of tricky to get your minimum width on some of those pie shapes, and so we actually set the buildings further back on a few of the ends of the cul-de-sacs so that, because it was easier to do that than to completely redesign the lots. So.
I think, and Mr. Burks, you might be able to answer, if I remember correctly, side setbacks in R3 are 5 feet, and in R2, I think they're 7 feet. That's a long time ago that I read that, but I'm pretty sure that's the main difference in R2. And I don't know if on the front setbacks, if it's 25 versus 30 or something like that, but it's basically, you still have an 8,400 square foot minimum lot size. I do believe cul-de-sac lots and corner lots have some different provisions as well, but your typical rectangular 120 by 70 lots, that's the primary difference that I know of. And if I'm wrong, please say so.
But you're correct.
Okay.
Mr. O, you still got a question?
No, I'm good, thank you.
You sure?
Yes.
So you had indicated that R2 would not impact your intention on how you develop. That being the case, is there any reason why zoning R2 instead of R3 would change things?
It would impact it some, as far as, like you say, the setbacks and the side setbacks. I think we had a couple lots that wouldn't fit. We might have to do a little bit, and reconfiguration, which we've done quite a bit of to kind of go with the city's plan on this. But, you know, cost-wise, you kind of look at everything the same. You know, if it's 25 versus 20 feet, you know, there's an extra 5 foot of driveway, there's an extra, you know, basically that's, you know, it's a little bit more economical without really a whole lot of change. It just, but.
Well, and I mean, what you are proposing and what you've got laid out, it's not uncommon. Developers, property owners typically like to maximize the opportunity. So it's not, but your engineer made the comment, and I didn't, if it truly wasn't going to change the layout, then we would normally take the approach that you make the softest rezone possible. And so if it was just making a jump from ag to R2 versus ag to R3 and it didn't change any other designs, then I think it's an easier sell. That's the only reason I asked the
I
question.
would say I probably misspoke there because, you know, he's right. There's an extra cost per lot anytime you're going to move that building back. I'm just saying it's not, you know, it's not a massive change in the way the lots would lay out and look.
Visually, yeah.
Visually on paper, but the house sitting further back, every time you build a 5 foot longer driveway, it's going to be more expensive. So, you know, it's a more impact to him, but is not, as far as how the lots lay out, it doesn't change significantly.
Would it reduce the number of lots?
I don't believe so, because the 8,400 still holds, and the minimum width and depth still holds, so it mostly would change the setbacks, which would mean he'd have to play with maybe some different house layouts, and like I said, longer driveways and bigger front yards, but by 5 feet, it's not gonna make a massive change. It's just gonna be some minor additional expenses.
So there would still be the same number of lots?
Yeah, you would still end up with probably the exact same layout. I did want to bring up one thing that you guys were talking about when you were talking about the traffic coming through there. I've laid out where I think the future street connection would go down to Wolf, and have put specifically a, you know, some curves in there to create kind of some natural traffic calming. You know, I don't know if that will be the final layout of that street, but by the time you have those curves, and you'll have some other curves down in the Wolf subdivision, I don't think you would end up with a bypass, except for, because I think it's going to be easier for people to take a road like Route U that is designed to carry more traffic.
Okay, so my only comment to that is, and I'm assuming you've never lived in Warrenton?
I have not.
It'll happen.
I'm not saying that people won't come through there. I'm just saying that if you're going from the Wolf subdivision, it seems like it would be a much easier route to go out to a major road compared to these windy, you know, local streets. And I've cut through, you know, subdivisions in my own town on occasion when there was an accident or there was, you know, a particular problem, but generally it's not convenient. So.
Well, it hasn't been said, but I'm going to say it anyway. The biggest concern with R3 versus R2, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's something we've said every single time, is the fact that if you don't build this thing and we give you R3 and you don't build this thing and you decide to sell it, then we've got to deal with someone that's got permission to build whatever the heck they want.
Well, it's not really whatever the heck they want. They still have to go through the whole process of, you know, planning, zoning, and, you know, changing anything that needs to be changed. There's processes in place to keep that from happening, you know. And there's R3 all around it. That was, you know, on both sides of it. And then proposed to the south, the development you were talking about, cutting through to the park to 47. That's R3. You know,
that's the way that was designed. It was R3 back there, and then R2 closer to the road, then C1 up top, I think.
Yes, sir.
I can't see a map, but
I think you're correct, though.
And Mr. Barton's comment is right. What we concern ourselves with R3 is not so much that in single-family homes that are built there are going to be substantially different necessarily than R2. But if
plans change, R3 allows, on a conditional use basis, it allows apartments. And we have a need for apartments in our community, and we talked about apartments already, some in this meeting. The question is, when you make something R3, now you're opening up that to be an apartment development in a place where maybe it was never really intended. And so that's why we ask those questions. It's not,
Yeah, it's not against.
it's not really concerned necessarily with what you've already proposed as far as the type of home that you want to build. But sometimes things change that none of us can anticipate, and then we have the next person come along that wants to put something in that maybe wasn't in our line of sight the night that we rezoned it.
Our job is to look out for everyone's best interests, all parties involved, the city, landowners, everybody. So that's kind of where this conversation is exactly the direction I wanted my question and QA session to go down. Yep.
Right, and that's why we are the Planning and Zoning Commission. That's our job. You know, we don't make final decisions on these things, but we sure give recommendations, and we respect the fact that you're trying to build what's the nicest for you too, but we have to protect what's in the best interest of the city and
everyone
and the
else,
neighbors.
so,
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's why, I mean, as soon as I saw that, I didn't know why. I thought that we had already said it was going to be R2. Maybe that was something else that we had talked about. So
There was another.
that's the same thing that it happens a lot of times that where people come in. Well,
Different project. We did do it on a couple.
oh sure.
And one of the things, Mr. Barton's heard this, and Mr. Deach probably, I don't know if Mr. Durbin's been here long enough. You know, typically when we rezone, if the property's above a certain acreage and it's either 1 or 2 acres, you can zone something regardless of whether what abuts it is the same thing or not. If it's smaller than that, you're looking at a spot zoning question, which is generally something we want to avoid. But this being a part of a eventual 35-acre site, I guess the rezone's for the full 35 acres, is it not?
Yes.
Okay. This being part of a 35-acre rezone, there's not really a concern with spot zoning, and we do have R3 that abuts on the south, and we do have a small amount of R3 that abuts on the northeast corner. So, you know, and it is following comprehensive plan, so I think, you know, our charge, if we're not going to rezone something that follows the comprehensive plan, we've got to have a really, really good rezone, or we need to change the comprehensive plan.
I agree.
So, having said that, I'm going to make a motion that we recommend approval of the rezone to R3.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Costello, second by Mr. Holt, to approve the Park Hill Zone Changes -67. Any other question or comments for anyone? Roll call vote.
Mr. Deach?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0, and thank you for your time, folks, and good luck.
Thank you.
Oh, might as well stay there because we got the next one. Sorry.
Yeah.
Park Hill subdivision, preliminary plat, phase 1 subdivision -87. And that's in the red there as we're looking at it.
Question about the FEMA flood map. I know there was discussion last time regarding, I was at least interested in looking at analysis from DNR on flood control and a hydrologic study of the area. I don't know if this FEMA flood map looks different. Has that particular image been updated with results from any hydrologic study from DNR?
Okay, well, first of all, DNR doesn't do floodplain mapping. That's FEMA only. So DNR really doesn't have anything to do with it unless you're talking about water quality, and we already have our state land disturbance permit. What you're seeing there is the outer part is the orange 500-year floodplain, which is a 0.2% annual chance of exceedance. The blue is the 1% annual chance or 100-year floodplain, and then the hatched part is the floodway, which has really strict rules about what you can do within that area. we took that has been extensively studied by FEMA. They have defined flood elevations that we are held to, you're held to, everybody's held to. How recently that was restudied, I didn't check that. But on the preliminary plat, what I did was I took the actual field topo where we went out and shot all of the elevations so that I could very accurately plot where those elevations fall. And because you trace that off of a digital file, it doesn't tend to be super accurate compared to putting those exact elevations on the on that topographic survey. So we took actual field data, mapped those elevations, and did that. We have not done the stormwater calculations for this because that's something you do at the construction document phase and the final plat phase. We have provided an extensive amount of area for stormwater detention to make sure that we don't exacerbate any existing runoff from the site. We will, of course, do all the things that the state requires us to do anyway for erosion and sediment control. And, you know, my first draft of this design was to not even go anywhere near the creek. But we had access issues, so we will have to build one culvert across it. And because of the FEMA floodway and some of the regulations tied at the federal level for that and dealing with the Army Corps of Engineers, we'll probably look at some kind of either sunken culvert or arch culvert that doesn't even, that spans the floodway so that we don't create any, we're required by FEMA not to create a rise in the flood elevation. So, and to be able to certify that, the easiest way is just to go over it. So we'll be working with the Corps of Engineers when we get into construction documents for that, and we'll have to file all the floodplain permitting, and we'll have to file show that we don't create a rise on that for that culvert to do that crossing.
And can you comment on the erosion concerns that the gentleman had earlier tonight?
This site has a fair bit of slope on it.
Yeah.
We will definitely have to, and in fact, though, the infrastructure construction will help that, because we'll have to step that grade down, and it'll create kind of natural breaks with the streets that are paralleling those that creek. So, but the state requires us to do an extensive stormwater pollution prevention plan, which in turn requires that we do a substantial amount of erosion and sediment control. And so we'll be looking at doing, that'll go in with our construction documents.
And as far as the sewer connection from your big project into the city there, I mean, you're not going to want any more problems that they're having down there either. I mean,
no, no one's
going to want to buy a house from you.
So sanitary sewer overflows are a big issue. Nobody wants those in their backyard. Nobody wants that going down the creek, and it's a major issue for the city and their own permitting. It sounds to me, and I have absolutely no knowledge of that trunk sewer beyond what we've surveyed that it exists, and that I've platted the easements for it, or plotted the existing easements onto my drawing. It sounds like there's an infiltration issue, and I don't know the age of that sewer and whether it needs, a substantial slip lining job or something, but that's what I've seen in other communities when we've had sewers that had surcharging manholes. During rain events, it's usually an infiltration and inflow problem.
Well, we're no different than any other community. We all know that our infrastructure has to be improved to stay up with the growth that we're going to be expecting. And that's always going to be the big concern of people that live here already, and should be a concern of people that are wanting to build here as well. So
absolutely,
we're hoping that everybody's good neighbors and we get this done through the city, and I know the city's well aware of what they have to get done as far as this goes too, and I don't know what the answers are because that's above my pay grade.
So, and the specific issue that Mr. Boozy-Cruz raised, I can remember this is quite a number of years ago when we were talking about some development to the east, but in line with that basically almost directly in line with the property that you're developing. Other residents to the east, kind of off of, between, say, Walton Street, South Side, there have been almost that same exact problem there going back at least 10 or 15 years that I can recall. And similarly, and Brandy probably knows this, on the north side of town, west, on the very west side of Fairgrounds, they used to have a lot of issues, and I think the city had done some projects that corrected that. I would, even knowing that we have an issue with it that's gone back a number of years, does the city have any long-range plans to maybe address or increase capacity or somehow minimize the frequency of those occurrences in this area that we're talking about?
And I actually got a text message from the from the Public Works Director, and you are correct. It is an I&I issue. They are, and he said that they might be able to do something short-term to go ahead and fix that part, but it's mainly from stormwater more than it is a sewer issue. He said a number of homes, they've looked at this already. They said looking at that and putting this residential in there is not going to affect the sewer part of it. It's the stormwater that's affecting it. So that's what they have to update, is that piece of it. And it is in the engineering is coming up in this budget. So it will be a little bit, it'll take a while for us to get that all fixed, but it is in the works.
Plus, and the things that you are doing as well, like with the culvert stuff like that, will help, hopefully, with that.
Inflow and infiltration primarily comes from groundwater and leaky manholes and leaky pipes and leaky service connections. So while we won't increase the stormwater runoff, we aren't going to be able to stop the fact that water is going to fall and soak into the ground and soak into those pipes because they're not in suitable, ideally you'd have nice new PVC pipes, nice concrete sealed manholes, and essentially a watertight system. And the nature of infrastructure in America is that it was put in decades ago and kind of forgotten about.
Sure.
So, I mean,
that's where we're at.
It's just the nature of things. And I mean, the American Society of Civil Engineers talks about it pretty much every year and says, hey guys, this infrastructure we put in, it has a lifespan. And, but there is a lot they can do I've done I&I projects all over the state of Missouri and Kansas in a former job. And we did almost the entire town of New Florence over again when I was with Schaefer, Klein, and Warren. And
She used that same acronym as you did. Can you, for the community?
Inflow and infiltration.
Thank you.
So it's really just about how water gets into your sanitary system, and it's worse when it rains.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Thank you for your answers on that.
No problem.
Randy, thank you as well.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions at this time about the preliminary plat phase?
So, are we talking about the whole plat with all 97 sites at this juncture, or just phase one?
Just phase one.
Just phase one.
So,
This is to approve the entire preliminary plat in concept, because we'll have to go back through this process for the final plat.
right.
To phase it.
To phase it.
So while we know that the intention is to develop phase one and that number of homes, the discussion of the plat is the entirety of it. I just wanted to clarify. So while we're talking about, less than a third of the total home sites.
20%.
Okay, yeah, so maybe almost
which already exists.
barely a fifth of the home sites to be phase one. Plat itself, once the plat's approved, the plat's the plat.
It's for the whole thing.
For the whole thing.
For the
Yeah.
whole thing,
Right.
so we're not just
Right.
money, we're doing, if we was to accept it, we're doing the whole thing. then
Oh, and then the Board of Aldermen still has to
Still have to.
discuss and review as well. So this is where the hard part comes in when we talk about R3, R2, R1, and all those things. The code is very, the code's pretty silent on how we arrive at what density is appropriate in certain places and in the community. And so we have developments that have this kind of density all over town. I can't think of one. This one's unique in my memory as far as having one with this number of home sites as an R3, with really what I would call, I mean, they're not even feeder streets. You know, Morgan I don't even consider to be a feeder street, much less a thoroughfare. So my concern is not with the fact that a development like this, that you could put any number of places in our community and it would be well suited. My concern is it well suited, even if we eventually connect over to Wolf Road, is it well suited to have this number of homes that probably half of which in the long run still will come in and out of Morgan Street. And, you know, Morgan as it sits right now is definitely not, it's really not a street that's capable of the kind of traffic that a neighborhood like this is going to generate.
We've discussed that with the city, and as far as I know, there are plans of bringing that up to specs quickly.
Correct. So we do actually have an agreement with Ben for Morgan, so that way if anything any kind of damages that is done from construction, that they will be fixed. But they are going to be temporarily fixed because that street, it's not in the works right now, I'll tell you that. But it is something that is in our future plans to that way it's curbed and guttered and repaired because it's already in bad shape prior to him even coming out there.
Right. And I mean, we have a number of streets in the city that need some love.
Exactly.
And so
a lot of love.
That's and that's probably not ever going to completely go away, no matter what. And established neighborhoods are a lot more difficult to deal with because we don't have curb and gutter. You know, we're trying to retrofit an old little lane and make it become a thoroughfare. I like this kind of development when we can access it from a service road, from a Highway 47, from arteries that really are designed to handle that flow. And I mean, I think the layout, I think the concept and the intention and the vision of it is good. My concern is my vision of what living there and living on the ways in and out are going to be like because of what we have. And it would really be helpful if the city does have some things on the drawing board that we don't know about, that we could have the opportunity to know those things before we're asked to stamp an approval on this. I think it puts us, and I think it probably puts the Board of Aldermen in a tough position because we're kind of betting on the come. And I trust the city staff is very, very capable to develop those things, but I haven't seen anything.
Well, I think that there's no way that, we all know that Morgan Street itself is a park road. It looks like a road up to the park.
Yeah.
It's not a city street. So I know the city's going to have to do something. They know that sooner than later, we hope. And I think with your help, you guys can make that happen as well. I mean, I know that you're working close with the city to try to do you're doing everything you can, it seems like. You're doing your part, it sounds like.
And my point is, I think I can live with, I don't live on that street. I can live with the idea of 20 homes being there. I can live with approving a plat for those 20 homes. I'm having a hard time not knowing what the rest of this is going to be and how we connect to it later, approving all 97. I really struggle with that.
And I think that's why the conditions were put in place, because we can't even get permits on the back half without all of that happening.
I get that, but I feel like, and it's not your fault in my opinion, but I feel like we need to have the whole picture first as a P&Z. I think we have to have the whole picture, but because we're accountable to everybody in this community, and the Board of Aldermen are accountable to everybody in this community. And if we were sitting here saying we have a concept for this entire plat and we're asking you to approve 20 home sites, phase 1 plat only,
I can say yes right now. But I can't say yes to 97 homes because I don't know what the rest is going to be. And that's me. And we have plenty of other commissioners, and then we got a board of aldermen. They can do whatever they want to do despite what we say.
Well, it says here though, Park Hills subdivision preliminary plat phase 1.
When you put a preliminary plat in front of a commission like yourselves,
Right.
you are required by ordinance
Right.
to show everything that you own contiguous and how you would envision it looking in the future.
In the future.
So I could have drawn that whole back thing empty of lots.
Right.
And said, yep, that's how I'm going to do it in the future, go ahead and approve it. But we don't want to be, we wanted to be transparent.
Sure,
We wanted
right.
to show, this is what we'd like to see. And we've, with all due respect, we tried to use Coleman, and we would have been happy to do some upgrades to the connection for Coleman. We had the highway department's approval to go out onto you. We were trying to not bring more traffic through residential neighborhoods than we had to, and the city said no. And they said they were in the middle of this comprehensive plan change that they wanted to put in front of you, which you then turned down. So if you want to tell me that my condition is open up Coleman and improve Coleman, we're good with that, because that was what we tried to do the first time. We changed it because they said, we want you to bring the traffic through Wolf. And Wolf was agreeable to that, thankfully, because if he said, nope, I'm not going to build it, we were just basically out of luck on the entire back, and it isn't back half, it's back 2/3, almost 3/4. So,
And I like the fact that you can't do anything on the back 2/3 until some conditions are met anyway.
And we've gone with that agreement, and we've been in talks with them and tried to look at what we could do to create more access. But we are landlocked on the west side, and I don't think they're particularly interested right now in that connection, but we've platted it there just to make sure that we could. We have actually 2 connections. It's kind of hard to see on the drawing. That northernmost cul-de-sac would actually go off to the west as well. We have if you look really close, there's an apron that would be built for that connection there as well. So we'd actually have 2 connections to the west and 1 connection to the south at some point in the future. I feel more confident about the south connection because I've already been in talks with the Wolf family. And I've already sketched out a design that they said, yeah, that's what we're thinking too. So, but, we've had our hands fairly tied by that, and we've had to give up a lot of land for, natural resource protection. So we're just trying to make the best of what we can with it.
Well, I understand all of those things, and I think that part of the obstacle for developing something like this is the layout and the concept. Like I said, you could lay it many places in this community, and you don't have near the number of issues that are created by being kind of tucked into the space that it sits in. And you can't change that. You own the property you own. But the real issue is that then the infrastructure, the road system is very, very far behind serving it. I mean, right now it's not there. It's going to take a great deal. And it used to be, we've had a number of cases over the years in the city where developments would go in, and it was probably less than adequate and less than ideal transportation infrastructure for it, but it just always fell to the city to later on bring it up to what it needed to be. And I think the city's moving in the direction of saying, hey, we've got to have a plan, and we've got to have some investment up front from the developer that's creating this density to take that burden off of the future homeowners and off of the existing residents in the city now. And I like that idea.
That's just,
I just really want to be in a situation where if we approve the concept of these 20 homes, that we are in no way, shape, or form obligated later on unless we're very happy with what the other pieces that fall into place are later on down the road. And
in my opinion, doesn't improve your bottom line probably, but it improves the ability for the community to serve these transportation needs if we're talking about some number fewer of total homes in the entire project. That changes a lot of things for you, and I'm not saying that's something you want to hear. I'm saying that that's something that we as a commission need to, we at least need to consider those issues. And every developer we ever meet wants to put as many in as they can, and that makes you no different than the rest in that regard. I just feel like we've got an obligation to make sure what the end product is doesn't become a burden on existing residents and future residents in the community from a cost point of view.
So help us understand this to make sure that we're all on the up and up. So right now, if this gets approved, they have permission to go ahead and start the first 20 homes, correct? Yes. But they cannot start phase 2 or 3 until we have in plan. Do they come back in front of us, or is it just the city? Do they have to come back in front of us with their street plan, their construction traffic? Will we see those plans? We should, shouldn't we?
I would like to.
Construction drawings, don't they just go through the engineering review process, not the public hearing process?
You would see the final.
The final
You still have
plat
to see the final.
But the final
But
plat
that's,
does come through
the
first.
final plat can be approved prior to that, prior to those conditions being put in place. Because that's part of the conditions before he gets building permits for that second phase. So you would just see a final plat, which is going to look like this.
Right.
But yes, there's more steps to this process. This is only approving the concept, and then we have to do the final plat, then we have to do construction documents. And there's a lot of steps along the way where somebody is going to be reviewing it and saying, does this meet city standards?
It does meet the city standards.
Yes, sir.
It does right now. And so that's where, having sat in this seat as long as Mr. Barton, Mr. Deitch and I have, and some of the rest of you really starting to learn these things as well, it does meet the city standards. And that's not been a question. I don't think it would be before us because the city already reviews those things and they know that it meets the minimum city standards. Our concern is, does it create unintended consequences and costs that are negative, that are borne by someone later, primarily people that live and pay taxes in this community? And is there a way to avoid that and still allow you to develop your property, but maybe different than what your first vision was? Because our code is really sadly silent on, R3, cram as many on as you can and go right ahead. And it doesn't say anything about, but we need to take into account hard to define issues like quality of neighborhood and density of population and
Change of plans.
changing in plans, and we have off-street and on-street parking, and these neighborhoods as they fill up, every neighborhood in town needs more places to park cars because you've got cars parked on both sides of the street, and that's not your problem, but it is
I think that's in your code with the striping plans and everything else. They've addressed a lot of these issues that you're talking about, and we've tried to follow the code, by the letter and worked with the city. In order for growth to happen, for all of these things that you've done with the overpass and everything else, for all of that commercial and things to move here, you have to have people to shop there.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do, is just bring people. I've built homes all over the city. This would be no different. As far as R3 to R2, like I say, if you drove through them, you probably couldn't tell the difference,
Well, and I own a business locally.
Yes, sir.
All of us that own businesses and make our living in this community, 100 new homes is, if you sell burgers, that's more people to buy burgers. If you sell fuel, it's more people to buy fuel. If you're in my business, it's more people to insure homes or cars. So you know, having quality homes that attract families that work and add to the community is a great thing. For me, it's just a question of how do we put 97 homes in this spot and not make it be something later on down the road that we are really stuck with. Stuck in a way where we don't have a good solution to the things that come with it. And that's my only concern. And my fear is if we approve a 97 home plat, the die is cast, there's not really any going back. Yeah, we know there's some other dominoes to fall as far as making sure we've got connector roads and things like that. But we're still talking about 97 home sites, a large number of which are going to come in and out of Morgan Street. And Morgan Street is just not, it's not set to handle that traffic. And even if it were, it has to go to Main Street or Walton Street to get to anywhere that's really a big enough artery to contain, to take that traffic. And I just don't think it's a good spot for 97 homes. I just don't.
I don't think it's a good spot either, so it's just too much density, and especially with the way Morgan is, if Morgan could handle more traffic, but I don't think it can handle more.
We did have a similar situation on a development. It was a multifamily. You will remember, I think you might remember, at Highway U and Main Street, and that was, I can't remember how many rental units or condos, but eventually we did succeed in reducing the total number of residential living units on that property. It's still really dense, but the number, I think they reduced the number by at least 16 and maybe 24. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was a good number, and it's still pretty packed, pretty tight. And our argument was, it's really not it's really not a spot for that number of homes, and I feel like that's the case here.
Anybody else have any questions?
All right, I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of Park Hills preliminary plat revision 3/30/31. Actually, like I said, ZC 67. 3/30/31 was the submission date.
Yeah, hold on just a second.
Oh, preliminary phase 1 subdivision.
There shouldn't be a phase 1.
I think that's what confused me.
Yeah, that's what it says on the agenda.
Yeah.
Right, just subdivision.
So subdivision
Park Hill
A7.
subdivision,
All right,
sub.
there we go.
Subdivision.
My bad, sorry.
That's
you're
all right. Technology's great.
Yeah, we need a second on Mr. Costello's,
Was the provision,
just to approve it at this time, which doesn't mean anything, just that you have to do the affirmative to start with.
I'll second that.
Now, we have time for any other questions or comments.
Because it,
And my question was that we were questioning R3 versus R2. If they would have come into R2, would we have been more apt to approve it at R2 than R3, knowing though it's still the same amount of houses from what I understand?
Yeah, I think R2 you would have a hard time getting quite that number on.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the other thing that confused me during this whole process tonight.
It's the same exact lot size.
Yeah.
400 foot. The only difference is how far back
Right.
or forward.
Yeah, and that was my point.
Side setbacks.
And that's my point.
You have to be more creative with your house footprint.
okay, and another question is, the staff recommends approval with preliminary plot with the following conditions. So we need to add those conditions in there with the initial.
I think,
Yeah, well, I mean, that condition, the development of phase 2 or later, is not permitted until access as developed by the city staff indicates floodplain development, parking lane striping plan, and then the construction for phase 1 is off of South Morgan. And I apologize for not putting those into the motion, but that's part of the consideration, so I apologize.
Who seconded it?
Mr. Cooper?
Okay.
Anybody else have any comments or questions?
As
Mr.
long
Bruce.
as the preliminary plat complies with all of the zoning codes, I have not heard a ground on which you can deny it.
Right.
That is my legal opinion at this time.
Right.
Just,
And we're only recommending it would be the Board of Aldermen that has to deny it.
again, I have not heard anything which would merit denying this right now.
So I guess my question is, what's the purpose of us even hearing this?
You are looking to see if this does comply with the zoning code, with all the other requirements set out. I mean, city staff has helped do that analysis, saying where it does and does not meet. And so, you know, I understand there's been a lot of discussion about other issues, but I feel like you guys have identified that some of those issues are not in the code, are not, you know, items that you're really evaluating.
So do we still make a vote on it then?
Yeah.
I don't see
That's
any
a motion.
point. What's the point?
We make a recommendation, and then the Board of Aldermen takes it up, and then they ratify or they don't.
And to some extent, the point is to bring up these issues so that we can talk about them and try to address as many of them as we're able.
I don't know, I think there's some provision depending on how the vote and the recommendation from P&Z comes, but I think there are certain circumstances under which if for instance, if the Board of Aldermen is voting to approve something that P&Z doesn't recommend, and you may know this, and if I'm wrong, please say so, but I think there are certain provisions if a certain percentage of the P&Z says they don't approve, then I believe there may be a higher majority requirement on the Board of Aldermen.
I'm not sure off the top of my head on that one.
Let's call for the question.
All right. So we have a motion by Mr. Costello, second by Mr. Cooper, to approve Park Hill subdivision preliminary plat, subdivision -87. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Roll call vote.
Mr. Holt?
Yes.
Mr. Costello?
Yes.
Mr. Deitch?
Yes.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Mr. Durbin?
No.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
And for the record, does he need to give a reason why he says no?
No.
No, okay. Motion passes 5-1 with 2 absent and 2 vacancies. Thank you for your cooperation and good luck and
Thank you very much.
Make us proud.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. And thank you for the city staff for all your work on input on this as well and continuing to make things move forward. And thanks for all the community for coming out and stating their opinions tonight. We really appreciate that, and especially the positive comments on how everybody's appreciating everybody working together. Let's close the meeting officially and open it up back to Mr. Burks to come and bring us up to date for something in the future.
We have a conditional use permit and a site plan, a subdivision of 4 homes at Cool and College, and a boundary line adjustment for next month.
Anybody else have anything for the good of the group? Mr. Leach, entertain a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Costello, all in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for coming out. Good night.